Which of these three rubs makes the tastiest brisket? Today, we're doing a head-to-head battle. Hey, I'm James from Smoking BBQ, and if you've been following the channel for a while, you know I'm a big fan of making my own rubs. So why are we using three different store-bought rubs? Well, first, I think store-bought rubs can be a great way to learn new things, and I'm excited to see what these three very successful rub companies have in store for us in terms of challenging our own assumptions. And the goal here is to pick the best of the best and have that start to refine my own rub, and I'll share that with you in terms of what we learn and what people like. Speaking of what people like, the taste test is not going to just be me saying which one I like. I've assembled a group of people and you'll be able to see their scores in terms of what do they pick, 1, 2, or 3, without knowing what the details are behind each one, so that we can also understand what appeals to more people. These taste tests can be tricky. It's like not everyone agrees on which coffee they like or beer or wine or whatever it may be. Our taste buds are different. So I'm looking for the rub not only that I like, but that also appeals to the most number of people, so I can start to adjust my rub going forward. Two other reasons that I don't love store-bought rubs is the clumping issue. So you can see here, we've definitely got some clumping going on that you need a fork to break things down. And cost, I think this bottle here, approaching local currency, is getting near $30 for a bottle of rub. Now, we don't have that issue with any of the three rubs that I'll be using today. Blacks in particular, it's just about $7 US. And so I'm not really looking for a cost comparison. What I hope to find out from today's experiment is which of these tastes the best to the most amount of taste buds so that we can apply that to our cook. Now for our cook, we're going to do something special. Let me tell you about it. So let me tell you about the game plan for our brisket. If there's anything I've learned about proper Texas barbecue versus, some of the methods you can see online, it's time is critical. You can't rush a good thing like brisket. And the method that we're going to do is actually approaching nearly 4 days. And that's inspired from the Blacks method that they've been kind enough to share and speak openly about. So day one is going to be our overnight dry brine. We're going to trim up our briskets, get all of our rubs on, and let them hang out in the refrigerator overnight. I'm doing 12 hours versus the full 24 that they spoke about. The next stage is going to be a smoke. And this is again specific to the Blacks method, not Franklin or Goldee's. But in the Blacks method, they do about a 6 or 7 hour smoke until you reach an internal temperature of around 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm going to do that in my offset smoker. I'm excited about this for a few different reasons. One, getting the best of different grill categories to come together. This is going to allow me to get a great smoke, and then the next day I can get a little bit of the set it and forget it nature that my Kamado Joe has, where I can set my fire and then not be spending my entire day tending to my fire. Speaking of the Goldee's method though, I am going to use the Derby fire in my offset. I've been playing with that where he does a 5-stick method. So we have 2 logs on the bottom, 3 on the top, and this has been a champ in a larger offset. At 110 gallons, I can get away with it. I can't do this in my smaller offsets that I had, and I tested because they go nuclear, about 400 degrees, but in around my 110 gallons, this is about the right size, the right capacity, that I can get about 275 degrees flat line and an hour with absolutely no interaction. So I'm only gonna have to build that fire 6 times, and I'm going to get the equivalent of about 7 hours of smoke. That's going to allow me to get a great stage 1 smoke on day 2. For day 3, once they hit that internal temperature around 160 degrees or about 6-7 hours, we're going to wrap them in foil, put them in the refrigerator overnight, and pick this back up on day 3. For day 3, I'm going to move to my Kamado Joe because now that we've got great smoke on there, we just need to worry about finishing cooking our briskets, and I don't want to have another day where I'm babysitting the fire, so I'll just be able to set it, forget it, get those 3 briskets on, and let them go to 190 degrees Fahrenheit. I mentioned 190 degrees Fahrenheit because all 3 of these restaurants do what's called a long hot hold. And I've been playing with this a lot lately, and there's a reason why restaurants do it. First, doesn't apply to us. In the backyard, we don't have a lineup at 7 a.m. of people looking for brisket. So the work back schedule to have brisket ready for 7 a.m. doesn't really apply. But the second benefit, I think they're absolutely on to something that doesn't get covered a whole lot, which is the landing spot is just that much easier to hit. Imagine if you were trying to toss a penny into a cup. A cup is super small, and getting your pennies to land in there, I had no luck. I got 0 out of 4. Whereas once I moved to a larger bowl from the same distance, I was 4 for 4. And by finishing our brisket at 190 degrees Fahrenheit, this makes not missing the overdone, underdone window, which is about 30 minutes. And it's probably the most difficult part of brisket if you're new to cooking brisket, is knowing exactly when your brisket is done and needs to be pulled for the rest. By going to 190 degrees, we just give ourselves a whole bunch more room to work with in terms of landing a consistent and a repeatable result. So that's exactly what we're gonna do on day 3, cook these to 190 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I'm gonna go for a long hot hold. So I'm going to be doing the long hot hold overnight at 160 degrees Fahrenheit in my Camp Chef Win-Win before I get rid of it. I mentioned getting rid of it. One of the things Camp Chef, when they first offered to send me a grill to test, I mentioned, well, I have a couple, I don't need an extra grill, but I do know a charity in town that was looking for a grill. I told this to Camp Chef, and they said they'd be more than happy to send one that I could do as many videos as I would like, and then send it to a new home. So thank you very much, Camp Chef, for sending that. But the Camp Chef Woodwind, the Masterbuilt Gravity series that I've had, as well as the Connected Joe, they've broken down a barrier for me in terms of things like automated temperature controllers. And since I don't have an automated temperature control, what? Or you mean like one of these? Or one of those? Or maybe one of these? So make sure you're subscribed and you have the notification bell turned on. This is going to be a future video. I'm 100% turned a corner on having a fan just for the benefit alone of a long hot hold. It's way less money to have one of these and be able to hold temperatures like 150 to 160 degrees for a long time than it is to have a dedicated pellet grill or something like that. But since I haven't put these through their paces yet to figure out which of the ones is my favorite that I'm going to keep, that's going to be a future video. I'm going to use the Camp Chef for today, but make sure you have the notification bell turned on so you're alerted when this video comes out. Anyways, enough about that one. Back to today. So through the power of TV magic, let's go back in time a couple days. I can show you the trimming, seasoning, as well as the cook process. And when you rejoin me present day, we'll dive in for our taste test. Okay, let's trim out and season up our briskets. So I've already dried these and left them in the refrigerator. There's just still a little bit of residue left on that. So the goal here, we're gonna try and get our 3 briskets as similar as possible. So I'm not gonna go absolutely crazy here on the bottom, but when I see areas of some silver skin, just like this, I'm gonna get my trimming knife and just pull that off. I'll take you fast forward while I do some of that work. But this is a good plug here. If you have not trimmed a brisket before, invest in a good knife. My first knife that I ever had would start to dull doing stuff like this before I was even done 1 brisket. And since we're doing 3, I don't want to sharpen my knife 3 times throughout the process. Okay, we've trimmed out our 3 briskets. I've tried to keep them as uniform in shape, size, and weight as possible, as evenly as we can for working with 3 different animals. So I've got some toothpicks here. I'm gonna mark Goldee's. I'll put in 1 toothpick, number 1, I guess Texas Monthly number 1, that makes sense. Then we'll do Franklins. Since there's 2 bottles, I'll give them 2 toothpicks, and blacks I will mark with 3 toothpicks. That's just so that we don't mix them up once we get on our pit. In terms of our trim, as you can see, I've just tried to remove the small ends so we have nice uniform thickness on the bottom of our flat, and anything that's going to burn be standing up in our smoker. I've thrown any of the extra meat into a pile that I'm going to add to some burgers, and then some extra fat I'm just going to throw in the pit in this pan, render down for some tallow in case we want that later. Let's start on the bottom and then finish presentation side. The Franklin rub is broken into 2 parts, salt and pepper, and then this barbecue spice rub, which doesn't have any salt in it. Tasting this tastes like Lowry's minus the salt. So we're just kind of mixing these 2 to get a pretty similar result, but that's what I'm looking to find out today in terms of how these all compare. So we'll start with our salt and pepper, and then we'll add the final seasonings. And last but not least, our blacks. Now, blacks uses table salt, so this is much heavier in terms of salt concentration than what's in the Goldees and the Franklins. So if it looks like I'm going a little bit thinner, it's because of the difference in the salt. It's going to pack a lot more punch for less content. So apply this gingerly, especially on the flat, and get away with a little bit more on the point. And that's it. So we'll let these dry brine overnight. Meet you tomorrow when we're getting these on the pit. Add our kiln dried wood. Grill Blazer grill gun fired up. Okay, let that burn down into a coal bed. Okay, so our fire to heat soak our pit as well as get as a coal bed has burned down, so now the pit is reading about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a great time to build our fire. So I'm going to be building the Derby style fire, which I'll show you here, as this is a nice fire for running about an hour with limited interaction. So we're going to place 2 logs lengthwise here right near our fire door, and then place 3 logs on top fairly tight to one another so we control our friction and airflow and get a long-lasting fire with great smoke. Let that catch. Okay, that looks good. Close our door back. Add our water pan. Add our briskets. Okay, we got our briskets in. Add our tallow. Let those smoke. Okay, we've been on about 6 hours, so I've just grabbed my Chef's Temp Final Touch X10. Let's see where we're at. We should be around 160, 170 according to the Black's method. So right around there, 160, 161, and the highest 168. So that is perfect. So now we're gonna get these off, let them cool a little bit, and then we'll wrap them. I'll also get a marker so we don't lose. This is number 1, number 3, number 2, so we don't end up mixing these up. Take a fast forward while I get these off. Also going to pull our smoked tallow off and let that start to cool down. I'll strain that off a little bit later when it's not so hot, and get our last brisket off. Sure do look pretty. Not done yet though. Okay, our briskets have rested for 30 minutes, so I've just got a Sharpie. I'm gonna wrap them in foil and then just make sure I mark on the foil on the outside 1, 2, and 3 so we don't mix these up while they're in the refrigerator overnight. I'll take you fast forward while I get to work, get all this stuff out of the way, and I'll see you tomorrow when we are going to heat up our Joe and move to phase 2 of finishing these off and dive in for our taste test. Okay, now that our smoked tallow is not so hot, I can strain that off. So under here I just have a big glass with a bit of a spout that I can pour into a mason jar and some paper towel. I don't have any cheesecloth, but if you had that, that would work great. So let's just take our tallow, pour that in. This is just gonna help filter out any of those unwanted impurities or anything else that we missed in our trim. And this will hold in the refrigerator for 30 days. We now have some smoked tallow whenever we want. Okay, we've got everything set out on the table behind us. Our 3 briskets, some smoking wood, meter probes, and a drip pan. But I want to get a fire going first thing in our Big Joe. So I'm going to take one of those pieces of smoking wood and place it on the bottom. This is going to be the smoking wood that lasts a little bit longer. The second piece we're going to throw right on top of the fire. And since we're starting with a cold ceramic and we're going to have our vents open, we're going to have max airflow, which is going to promote some clean burn. So we're going to get, well, this much more wood burning nice and clean. It's not going to replicate or beat anything that we've done in the 6 hours or so on our offset smoker, but it's just going to help give a little bit of that fresh aroma smoke. This is some smoke compounds dissipate overnight once they're stored in the refrigerator. So this is all I'm trying to add back with a little bit of extra smoke. Everything else that we've done that's going to penetrate deeply into our briskets was achieved yesterday. Let's get some charcoal, drop in some togo. Okay, that looks good. We've got everything covered up, and I'm making sure that we're just not up so high that any charcoal is going to be touching our deflector plates. Let's grab our Grill Blazer grill gun, fire it up. Okay, we've got a nice clean burn as it's trying to come up to temperature, so we're going to drop in our divide and conquer rack, heat deflectors, our X accessory rack for our drip pan. I'm doing that just so there's a small air gap before our drip pan so the fat drippings don't burn as easily. This is the new 18-inch smokeware drip pan. I've just covered in foil to make it a little bit easier to clean up, but it gives us a little bit more surface area to work with. And our cooking grid. Let's go get our briskets out of the foil. Okay, we've got our briskets laid out, and instead of the toothpicks now that I'm going to be tracking for finishing temperature, I'm just going to match the corresponding number on the bottom of the meter probe. So I got probe number 1 for brisket number 1, probe number 2, make sure I have the right one for brisket number 2, and probe number 3 for brisket number 3. I'll take you fast forward while I get these out of foil and the probes in each one. We can go get them on our pit. Number 3, so this is Goldee's Blacks, and brisket number 2. Gonna warm these up, finish the cook at 250 degrees. Okay, I think we're ready to wrap our briskets for a hot hold. So I'm going to once again mark with foil. So this is number 2. Let's get some foil. And number 3. Okay, our briskets have been in a hot hold for nearly 17 hours. I'll get these out of the way, but just so we know, number 1 here, Goldee's, number 2, Franklin's in the middle, and number 3, Black. So take you fast forward while we get these out, ready on the board. Okay, we've got our briskets laid out and ready for our taste test. I've replaced them with numbers. I'll put up on screen which one's which so I don't get confused and you can keep track. But all 3 feel incredible. Just the slightest touch and we have a great jiggle. So I'm gonna get my offset slicing knife out. We'll start carving them up. I'm gonna work on number 1 first. Get a little space here on the board. Okay, we've got our brisket all sliced and ready. You guys on screen know what they are, the guests don't. So we'll do random order and they're going to be judging for which of the 3 flavors they like best. Let's start tallying up the results. All right, out of the 3, what do you like best?
I gotta go number 1.
Number 1. Cheers.
I think number 3.
Number 3?
No.
All right, thanks.
My pick's number 2.
Number 2. All right, thanks. All right, what do you think?
I like number 3.
Number 3.
Good.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, which of the 3 do you prefer?
I think I'm number 2.
Number 2?
I'm number 2.
Number 2.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
It's great.
All right, my turn. Number 3 for me.
Dad, what's this?
It's brisket. Have some.
What's brisket?
It's cow. Number 2. Sit. Number 3. Which one do you like better? So that was super interesting. And even though there's a lot of time, energy, and cost that goes into it, the learnings are invaluable. You just can't beat some of these insights and experiences that you gain doing things side by side, because going from memory to say, well, a couple weeks ago, a month ago, or last year, I really think I like this versus that. It just can't beat being able to taste things side by side and see exactly what you like best. So a surprising result here. So the most popular crowd consensus, and I'll put the final tallies up on score, was the Black's Rub, which is also the least expensive. I don't want to misquote you here on the price, but they are just about $7 or $8. I'll put the exact amount, so in case I'm off from memory. Number 2 was the Franklin's Rub. So this is a little bit more expensive because they come in 3 packs, but when you get the 3 packs, divide it by 3 and you figure it out. I think the effective price is around $11.99, something like that, $12. And then in 3rd place with the least amount of votes was the Goldee's Rub, which I, again, going from memory, I'll put the exact amount on screen, I think was about $19. So the least expensive rub was absolutely the hands down overall winner, with the medium price rub coming in with the 2nd amount of votes, and trailing by a bit of a good distance was the Goldee's barbecue rub. So when it comes to recreating my rub and starting to look at what is it that these 2 rubs are doing differently that appeal to more people, because, and I say more people because again, when I've tested this independently, there's a lot that I like about this rub. When I've had it on its own, not with anything else to compare to, I thought quite highly of it, and I still do, and good thing too, because I bought many of these getting ready for this experiment to try them on a whole bunch of different cooks. But given the crowd consensus lies with Black's by a long shot and Franklin's number 2, these are going to be the 2 rubs that I look to modify and compare my rub to. When you want to see some of those head-to-heads in terms of how my rub compares to some of these, as well as what things I can find that they're doing different to tweak and enhance my rub to get as close to this winning combo, I'll be sure to share that in a future video. That's it for today, though. I'm James from Smoking Dad BBQ signing off, and remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.